I am very, very proud to present our most power-packed, star-studded panel. This is a panel of the ultimate leaderships, the leaders of hospitality in India and abroad. And I don't think I need to introduce everyone on the panel, but let me say there is Mr. Puneet Chhatwal, who's the MD and CEO of Taj Hotels. There is Mr. Kapil Chopra, who is the founder CEO of the Postcard Hotels. There is Mr. Anuraag Bhatnagar, who is the coup of Leela Group. There is Mr. KB Kachru, who is the Emeritus President of Radisson in South Asia. There is Mr. Mandeep Singh Lamba, who is the President of South Asia for HBS ANAROCK. And then there is Yateendra Sinh, who is the Principal of Y&S Associates in Switzerland. So, guys, we know everybody has been making a lot of crying and noise about what's been happening in the industry. And I know industry is in a bad shape, but as of today, we have heard some interesting things. One, I think yesterday, Europe decided that they're going to be starting to open tourism. I don't know what effect it's going to have on us immediately, but it's a good sign because they were the epicenter of the infection. And then after that, of course, we have heard that Bangalore, Sikkim, and Goa are planning to then open up. So shall we start? Shall we start with Mr. Chhatwal, since you have hotels in every corner of the country? What is it looking like, and what is the way ahead?
It is not looking good at the moment. It would be fair to say that the industry has never seen such times before. And I hope, at least in my lifetime, these times don't come back again. I think many of the hotels were shut. I think what would be fair to say more than 1/3 of our portfolio has been shut down. 1/3 has been semi-open and 1/3 is operational. We have some new areas or avenues of demand which have come in with the people returning back, the evacuation flights or the repatriation flights that you might call in, that of course has helped us to get into double-digit occupancy figures. There are some new ways that we are seeing we can do business in terms of creating revenue, very, very creative ways everyone is coming up with. But the way it stands now, and I think for the next 60, 90 days, is very uncertain. However, as an optimist, I think within 4 months, we will start seeing slow growth. I would not say strong growth, but we'll start seeing slow growth on the normal business. And going forward, definitely in the midterm, the growth will remain a bit sluggish, slow in certain areas, fast in other areas. But long term, this industry has always been very resilient. This industry is very important for the global economy. This industry has contributed significantly to creation of jobs globally as well as to the GDP. This industry is very important for the character and the sensitivities of the people and learning about the cultures. So I'm very, very, very optimistic and less concerned about the long-term future of the industry. It's the short term that we need to overcome. And I think everyone is putting different strategies in place how to overcome that.
Thank you. Mr. Kachru, you're one of the veterans of the industry and you've seen the industry for many, many decades. And I'm sure you'll agree with everyone to know that nothing like this has ever happened before. So what is the way forward, at least for Radisson as well? And what are you thinking is going to be happening in the future?
You know, as Puneet said, nobody had seen this. And I only want to add to it that nobody had planned for this. So the situation is quite grim at the moment. I mean, we want to stay optimistic. There's just no doubt about it, because I think if we ourselves don't feel optimistic about it, how will we motivate others to start traveling? You know, travel is something which you can't hold travel. People will travel. It is a desire, it's a need. People will travel. We as a company, we are following literally the same pattern which anybody else is also doing. Actually, 60% of our hotels are shut at the moment. And we have some hotels which are doing reasonable because they are used for medicals and related corona related things, whatever is required at various locations. I I personally feel where we have to worry is we have to look at a situation when we create confidence in the traveler, confidence within our own setup. And I think we'll have to do it collectively. It is not an individual effort on anybody's part. The government has to be part of it. They have to recognize, as Puneet said correctly, I mean, we create and have been saying this everywhere that we contribute 9% of the GDP of the country. We create employment. 9% of total employment is out of our industry. And I think government has to look at us that if at this stage we don't support each other, we'll not be able to grow. We'll not be able to survive. I think the biggest thing for us is to survive, revive ourselves, and then only can we think of thriving. I am optimistic. Domestic travel will move much faster. I don't think international travel, there would be a huge jump in the next 12 months. In fact, there would be a rather very, very small movement in next 12 to 18 months. The main business is going to be domestic. And I think we have to gear up ourselves totally for that. And more so, whatever is drivable from any particular location. If, for example, if you are in Delhi, I mean, places like Agra, places like hills in Uttarakhand, Himachal, Jaipur, Rajasthan, drivable distance, there's a pent-up demand people have, and they will travel. So I want to be cautiously optimistic about it.
Kapil, your hotels are in leisure destinations and you're planning to open up more. And I remember that you had a chat with me when this was right at the beginning, where you said that the small hotels will be the ones with having advantages. So, what is your view now? And what are you guys doing about opening up again? Because Goa is going to be opening pretty soon. At least that's what we hear.
Yeah. So thanks, Vikramjeet. So the way that I look at it is, currently what is there today, more than the virus, it's the fear. And that fear is very, natural. The fear is of health, fear is of safety, security of your loved ones and your
Just
own
speak
health.
up a bit. I can't hear
Yeah.
you.
So it's
Yeah.
your own health. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the fear that people have of their own health. It's a fear. So the pandemic is, addressing a very basic emotion of fear. So I think that fear needs to be addressed, whether it's a smaller hotel or a bigger hotel. Depends upon how well you address it, how visually you are able to convince people that it is okay to travel. Like Mr. Kachru said, I think the first level of travel will happen from drivable destinations. And the first level of travel will happen to destinations which are from a driving, which are on a driving basis from major cities, in addition to being COVID free. So I think Shimla, very close to Delhi, with zero COVID cases till now, will recover, will actually get more domestic leisure travel the moment this entire thing finishes than any other destination. Goa may get more travel because they've hardly had any COVID cases except yesterday when they got some more. But for good 30 days, they were just down to zero cases. So will happen there. So travel will happen where the destinations are a bit COVID free and people feel safe and they're not fearful of going there. Now, coming to the question of when you start traveling, would you prefer staying in a bigger hotel or a smaller hotel? It's a choice that people will make. And also the fact that we believe, because we are very private, small, intimate hotels, non-resident guests are not really coming into the hotel because we are more suited from a residential perspective. I think there is an advantage with that, so that people are together in one hotel. But I'm also aware that a lot of hotels actually run a lot of small hotels across the country, and I think the smaller hotels will come back faster than the larger hotels. But I also believe that if you look at the entire spectrum of travel, before domestic leisure comes back, I think budget business will come back first, because a lot of people have now been sitting at home. And if you're the area sales manager of an FMCG company, you will have to travel to get orders or to move there. So I think the first level of business comeback will happen in budget business segment. The second level of comeback will happen in domestic leisure, especially since schools are closed and people have now been holed up for over 50 days in their homes. So they will actually try and get out. But the most important thing that hoteliers need to do is address the feeling of fear. If you're able to address that, then travel will slowly start getting normal. I also believe that it will take a long time to recover. Means if you really look at the fact that in pretty much any consumer-facing business, especially hospitality or restaurants, the clock's been set back by a year at least. So if you can do what you did this February, next February, you're pretty fortunate. So the clock's been slightly reset across the spectrum. And when I'm saying this, I'm talking across the spectrum actually for everybody.
Okay. Now I wanted like to speak to Anuraag. Anuraag, tell us a little bit about what you guys are. You are mostly city hotels in the luxury segment. So how are you dealing with the situation? What are you going to do going forward, and what are you doing about preparing for the business which is to come?
So, I am all our hotels are open right now. So we didn't shut or close down any of our hotels. So we also have resort hotels in Udaipur and Goa, and pretty much in agreement and resonate with what other panelists have said. We definitely see some muted demand coming in right now, but very early stages. It's trickling in, and we see a lot of queries coming in, whether it's to do with weddings or from work from home or work from hotel kind of queries, or small groups, and mostly domestic. So I think the pent-up demand that others were talking about is definitely existing in India, and we want to be there when literally the country opens up. It's obviously contingent on when the flights start operating and when the sentiment of the guests actually changes, and the fear psychosis that Kapil was referring to is slightly mitigated. It's very, very important for all hotels, not just Leela hotels, to be ready when this happens. So I think there's going to be a lot of focus in terms of creating that confidence in the customer that safety and sanitation is kind of going to be the new luxury, that you are walking and you're walking into a safe hotel, and you're going to walk out and check out also being a safe hotel. People have got used to work from home. So there could be a hybrid model of working, which could be working from a hotel. In our hotels in Bangalore and Gurgaon, we have some inbound requests from some corporate entities in terms of where they could set up a room as an office, and it could be work from a hotel. We are also seeing several expressions of interest for mini staycations, if I may use the word. People living in a city and wanting to travel to a hotel in the same city, because just imagine the sentiment. You have been locked in for more than 45 to 60 days breathing the same air. You probably need to go out and spend some time in a hotel. So we could definitely see that. But all of this is basically taking over care of the next 60 to 90 days. Overall, we don't see much happening, heavy lifting happening before Q4 of this year and early 2021. The other aspect that we are counting on, and this is what our partners in travel trade keep talking about, India, as we all know, has been a great market for outbound. Now that outbound is also suffering from the same sentiment that there's not going to be too much of travel to Europe from India and to the US from India. So that's a segment, whether it's to do with weddings, destination weddings, or just FIT travelers. That's something that we are counting on. So we are at the Leela, we're just recalibrating almost everything. And whilst everybody's focused on getting every business that is out there, it's also very important that we kind of restructure and reimagine our whole cost structures and look at how we can really be viable from the lessons learned post-COVID. COVID has taught us many lessons. It's kind of trained all of us to start looking at EBITDAs and flow-throughs and the ability to really service our hotels and keep the lights on. So those are the lessons that we have learned from COVID, and we are mindfully kind of building on that, kind of recalibrating and repurposing many of our venues and outlets to see when the new normal arrives that we are ready to offer a luxury experience whilst being very mindful that from high touch, high contact is going to be extremely low touch, but more technological and technology enabled interaction. So this is some of the stuff that I feel, but completely agree with what others have said that the new normal, if we are able to come to almost 10% short of what we did in 2019 in 2021, I think that would be a good starting point.
Mandeep, I wanted to turn to you to give me a fuller picture of what's going on throughout the segments. And I just saw, I think yesterday or day before, I saw an ad of a hotel in Hyderabad which said we have got 80% occupancy throughout this period. So there are these little pockets where there are people who are staying in hotels or doing their work from hotels and being allowed to do so. So tell us a little bit about the picture and what is it looking like? I know you've been saying bounce back for the last 2 months that we have been talking. So what's going to happen?
Thanks, Vikramjeet. Very good afternoon, everyone. Actually, very good evening. I think that most of the sentiment has been expressed by my colleagues on the panel. I think the industry is very, very resilient. And I think the industry has seen disruptions before. The only thing that I want to state here is one, that we've never seen a disruption of this kind in terms of demand. The drop in demand has never ever been as severe as we are going to see now. The good part is that while, let's say, the last disruption that we had, which was during the GFC, from which we took a very long time to recover, the problem was the supply. We had a very large, significant amount of supply come into our sector, which delayed the revival. This time, we're not going to see that. There's going to be very little supply coming in, and therefore it is going to be a limited situation of demand picking up. Demand is only a matter of time. The question is, what is that time? Is it 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, a year? I don't think anybody really has the answers. I think we're all doing our own permutations and combinations to see what might come through. The truth that I believe is that the demand will really bounce back once we either have a cure or we have a vaccine. And that's the time when we will see some serious travel bounce back coming, which the world is now calling revenge travel, as you're seeing in China, where all the pent up demand is going to come out. The other caution that I have is that we're off late, a lot of figures of China are being thrown into public domain on how it's sort of picking up very quickly. But the difference being that China is almost COVID free, which we are not. We are far from it at this moment in time. Our numbers, in fact, are accelerating at this while we are trying to open the economy. And how that pans out, we still don't know. The other thing that I'm a little cautious about is that while the industry and its players have always been extremely resilient, confident, and always ready to take it on, I don't want this to be misread by the government as a sector which doesn't need help because of the sort of sentiment that we may be stating. So I do think the sector will need government support. It's going to be tough for the smaller players, the MSMEs amongst us, to survive this. So therefore, that part is going to be very, very critical. And I do hope that the government does come out and support. We've started seeing some announcements being made, but in the last 2 days, we haven't really heard anything in as much as the tourism sector is concerned. And we're hoping that that will come by. In terms of revival, Anuraag mentioned about outbound travel. So here's a quick number, 11 million inbound, 26 million outbound. So we can do some maths here. I think we need to start getting aggressive about chasing these 26 million who went to other countries from India and get them to use our hotels to replace the 11 million who came from overseas into our country. It's almost 2.5 times. So I think there is some merit there to see domestic travel kind of taking over. The only thing is these things take a little time for especially the luxury hotels or the upper upscale and luxury hotels where international travel is almost 50% or more. It may take a while for the domestic travel to be wooed and brought into those hotels. Like Kapil said, business will revive first in the economy and the mid-scale for sure. And leisure will see upscale, upper upscale and luxury getting revived first because the rest of the gang may not have lost jobs or salary cuts and may not be able to afford the holiday that they much want, but may not be able to afford for now. So that's, I think, what is going to happen. To summarize it, I think that we are all, as a sector, very, very confident that we will bounce back, and certainly we will. However, the sector will need government support, and I do hope it comes, in as much as at least supporting the employment generation within that sector and the boost to make it grow, government support to make it grow. And third is that I do hope that we find a cure or a vaccine as quickly as we can, which will then bring the business back to normal, although my sense is that that could take anywhere between 12 to 15 months.
Thank you. Yati, I'm going to turn to you now. So tell us a little bit of what is the perception of what's happening in Indian hospitality from outside, because you're sitting in Switzerland. So you may have an idea about that. And what do you think you need to do? Because I don't think for 1 year now, there'll be nobody coming in from anywhere, going anywhere as such.
Yeah, so I mean, I will first just give you a quick update on where Europe is at this stage, and then link it to a perception of India, if I may, because I don't think I'm the only one who should be giving a perception of India. Puneet can give maybe a stronger perception of India, having spent a number of years outside along with me. But just a few things that we are seeing in Europe, which link into what you said. So leisure is going to come back first, based only in the driving distances. Leisure is not going to come back in the long distance travel. So if I look at the airlines, all the airlines have all made plans that the earliest they will see leisure business is next summer. And that's also going to be a trickle. So they've all rescheduled their aircraft capacities from that perspective. And that's going to hurt us, whether we like it or not. The international leisure is not going to touch us for a while. So we've got to find that 26 million that Mandeep was talking about, which I think is fantastic. Because if you've got a trade imbalance 11 to 26, let's look at the 26, we've got the bigger pie. What we're seeing in Europe, more importantly, is that all the governments have just launched campaigns to market stay at home or travel at home or come visit and use our properties within our lands. So part of the support that the government could give, and we could copy or ape the outside world, is let's look at a tourism campaign for Indians to stay in India. We talk about campaigns of manufacture in India, but here's a moment where we have to say, listen, experience India, travel and use our properties in India. If that's what's happening in Switzerland, that's what's happening in Germany, Austria, France, etc. They're all into that movement. Also, what you're going to see is that travel zones are going to open up only in phases. So you're not going to get the ability to travel out, even if you have aircraft capacity. Governments are not going to let you do that. So that's the next phase. And then finally, the perception of India, of course, India is the big magnet along with China. Europe was searching for their travelers. So there's great depression, if I can say, from the European side to say, hey, we've lost two of our biggest source markets, and that's going to hurt. So there also, the European companies are all looking and seeing how we can get footprints into India. Anuraag can talk more about how money comes into India. Puneet, of course, is trying to do the reverse, but he's sold enough hotels in the past into India. So you know, what's the perception of India? I want a property, I want a footprint in India. Luckily, like Mandeep said, not that many new property supplies are coming in at this stage. So those who are already in have an advantage.
Puneet, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I was listening, very carefully. I don't think, appreciate all the comments made by everyone. But first I have to turn to Yateendra. I think it's not fair to say that I am not coming back to Europe for one more year. That's, even if that was true, it's not a statement I want to hear at this moment, because I'm dying to get onto a flight and go back for whatever, even if it's for 5 days or 6 days. And I think there are millions like me who want to do that, both coming into India and going back from India to, meet their kith and kin or families or children studying abroad, or, separated from spouses, etc., etc. So I think something will happen that will change, and it will happen fast. Whether it happens in 3 months or 6 months, we can debate on that. Uh, so that's the positive. The second thing which Mandeep said, if I may comment on it, is a very, very important thing, what he mentioned. See, oversupply is a permanent problem or semi-permanent problem till the demand grows to a certain level to meet that supply level to get to those occupancy levels. So I think we are blessed on the Indian subcontinent to have come out of that phase because the demand for the last 3-4 years has been outpacing the supply. So, but not just that is important. This is a time of reimagining and resetting. And I am not sure if a lot of the current supply that is shut down will also open the way it was open before, whether it's in the unorganized, organized, branded, unbranded sector. Things will change because alternative, more profitable uses of certain real estate assets in certain locations will come up, which we don't know today. So I think that's another part which is important. I actually differ in my opinion, with a few of my colleagues here, and that is, uh, yes, we all feel that budget sector will rebound faster because people will have less disposable income. At the same time, I do feel that safety and security, the 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 importance of overcoming the fear to travel, that cannot be as well satisfied with the majority of the budget sector because it's not in a branded segment or brands that you can trust. So the majority of that supply would still be in the upper upscale and the luxury and the deluxe segment. And I think for some time, maybe people will travel less, maybe there will be lesser number of days, but they would still like to trade higher just because they want to overcome the fear that they feel safer in a Taj property than in somebody they don't know in the budget sector. So I think if you ask me for comments, that's the only comments I would make. The rest is, we are all in the same industry.
Yeah.
We have all learned from the same school, more or less. So I think we all think also the same way.
I was going to talk about that, but you already mentioned that. Okay. Now let me talk. Let me ask you another question, which I'm going to ask all the panelists, which is that uh, going forward, what do you think the hotel industry needs to do to become more self-reliant? Because right now we are all waiting for the government to give us some support, and it's not coming. And even in the last time, I think they sat there and they saw the CM's meeting and they saw this 20,000 crores or whatever. Obviously, there is more need in other parts of the economy for money, but the hospitality sector is also very, very crucial for the economy, whether it is for earning, whether it is for giving employment. So, what kind of, from the hospitality industry point of view, how do you think we'll be able to ask for or be able to raise the funds to survive this period?
You want me to go first or?
Yes.
Okay. So I think, there is no one size fits all here. It's every organization, every brand is in a different phase of its life cycle. That's one. The second is they have a different size. So as a 116-year-old company, we have a different structure. We have different kinds of brands. Each of those brands are also in their different phases of life cycle. So from our point of view, I think I can only say what Indian Hotels has thought of in trying to reimagine its business model is 5 key initiatives in these times. Why? Because a crisis also presents an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reimagine and reinvent yourself. So the first of those is reinforcing excellence to the next level. It's not that we were not excellent before. When we are talking, I see all these questions keep coming up about, the new normal and how health and how cleanliness and how other things would be as if we were not clean before. I think we were very clean. We have to only get through, as Kapil said, through this perception of fear and become more and more professional. And in anything that we do, we have to be excellent and better than any other industry is able to perform in those kind of sectors. So So that's one of it. The second important thing is what are the key revenue initiatives? Because just by cutting cost, you're not going to able to get to the February level as mentioned by Anuraag. If you had the same, revenue as you had, or someone else, one of my colleagues mentioned that. So I think what are the new key revenue initiatives? The third one is zero-based costing. It's an opportunity not on the labor cost. How we have so much of things that we do, and having lived in Europe for almost 3 decades, a lot of that is not done, and still the hotels are perceived as luxury. It's like nice to have. So maybe it's a time to readjust and see, are all the costs that you have, are they necessary? The fourth most important thing, and I think all the panelists here would agree, this is the moment of asset management. This is a moment of owners' relations. It's a moment to have empathy for how the owners are feeling and what they're going through, because we not only own and run our hotels, we also operate third-party hotels. So how can we find creative solutions to weather this crisis? And last not least, I would say, is the most important: financial prudence. At this point of time, cash is king, and having access to cash is important to get through the next 3, 6, 8, 9 months, 10 months, in a worst case scenario, whatever, 12, 14, 16, 18 months. And financial prudence will help us to what has been mentioned as thrival in the long term. Because don't be prudent now, make it a best in class practice in your business model. So not only your company thrives, rather the industry thrives.
Kachru Saab?
Well, quite a lot of this has been said, and I feel, I was just reading the other day what Jack Ma said. He said, if you survive 2020, think it was a very profitable year. So, I'm coming from that scenario, and I also would like to reinvent the whole thing, and that's what our company is doing. I mean, what we were, as we used to earlier refer BC and AC, what was before Corona and what is after Corona. Financial prudence. Cash is a huge, huge problem. The other day, I don't know, a lot of you must have read this Avalon Research report. 68% of the listed companies don't have working capital over 2.5 months. How do you work with that? These are some of the problems, and then you have to accept the reality. You have to move away from hugs and handshakes to social distancing. So there, what Kapil said, the sense of fear, you have to create that confidence level. I feel while I say there is cautious optimism, but I think we have to take a long-term view of where we want to be, whether we start from zero cost basis or whether we actually look at only one of the verticals of our operating costs, but the whole thing has to be re-engineered. And we also have to retool our people. If we don't do that, we will not be there. I think, as I said the other day, abhi to dukaan band hai. That's the kind of situation today. So I think we will, in the long run, we will survive. But at the moment, I think we have to work out in a manner that we get over this. And, we're all optimistic people. We say that this too will pass. I hope it does. And we have to take certain measures, like in Radisson Group. I think we are spending a lot of time, effort, and money on tweaking our technology and processes. And let me tell you, only those people who are quick, decisive, and innovative will make it. Otherwise, they'll have to fend for themselves.
Okay. Kapil, your company already has a lot of innovation. You have also multitasking, which is now the big word. Everybody has to multitask and do lots of different things. So how do you see moving forward? What are the things that you need to take into consideration? And in the same line as what Puneet and Sir was saying.
So, the way that I look at it is very simple. And Puneet said it very rightly that, there is no one size fits all. So there is, everybody has to have their own solutions. But let me just go back to the genesis of when I did the Postcard Hotel after my stint at the Oberoi. The idea was that I felt that luxury was moving to smaller, intimate, ultra immersive experiences. So we needed to do smaller, intimate, ultra immersive hotels. The second part was, the hotels needed to have a return on capital which was positive and very highly positive. I had a very big problem with setting up a 200, 300, 400, 500 crore hotel in one single destination. How could I, and that could be achieved in three ways, whether it was a management contract, whether it was a long-term asset lease, or whether it was a buyout with a separate registered property company so that your operating company balance sheet is always well placed. And that's the way we started the Postcard Hotel. Why did we start the Postcard Hotel? Because we felt that resort experiences and leisure destinations were becoming more cookie cutter. That means the pools were getting bigger and the gardens were getting bigger, but actually nothing else in the hotel was changing. So we wanted to build in a new level of experiential transformative brand, and that's why we started the Postcard Hotel. So, and why did we start the Postcard Hotel now and not earlier? Very simple, because we felt that the domestic high-end Indian traveler had started traveling. Yeah, so if I would have done the Postcard maybe in 2013, I don't think we would have been that successful. But let me give you a real example. In my first year as president at the Oberoi Group, Wildflower Hall had just come out of profits, but it had over 100 crores of accumulated losses, if I remember correctly. Yeah, for 10 years it had been operating with accumulated losses. But it was the only hotel in the entire tenure of 5 years which kind of doubled its profits every year, 100% growth. How many hotels do 100% growth on profit? And nothing changed. I think, okay, we paid some attention, marketing, everything. I think the bigger reason that it did that was not because of what we were doing, but I think because the domestic Indian travelers started traveling. Another big number was, you look at Oberoi Uday Vilas in 2004, 90% foreign occupancy, 10% Indian occupancy. By 2018, 55% Indian occupancy, 45% foreign occupancy. So the domestic Indian market was coming out to its own. Like Mandeep gave you a number of 26 millions going outbound. Let's turn some numbers around. 10 million, inbound foreign travel coming into this country. Out of the 10 million, at least 7 million is between Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. So actually, it's only 3 million. Yeah, means
medical tourism.
Yeah, well, whatever, just keeps on happening. So 3 million, and actually in the luxury sector, 1.5 million, not over that. Yeah. Let's look at trips that people make in India. 1.8 billion trips happen in India. 1.8 billion trips. A trip is defined as a bus ticket, interstate, a train ticket, a flight ticket, or any other. So 1.8, even if 0.01% of that trips are okay, you got 18 million people in that right segment. So the domestic market, it's a bit like the stock market, Bikram, where today domestic institutional flows are more than the foreign institutional flows, which was what was needed for the last 10 years of Indian stock markets to reach a new high.
Yeah.
Today, the foreign FIIs sell and the domestic institutions are able to buy. So I think also I rightly agree with both Mr. Kachru and Puneet in that matter, that finally people who are innovative, people who are looking at the business with a completely different mindset and different eye will survive, really. Yeah. And also it is the relative strength of your balance sheet. So for a startup brand like ours, the game is, can we survive 3 years if the situation does not stay normal? Or can we survive a year if the situation does not stay normal? So for brands like us, which are still new in the market, start, getting established right now as we speak, and will take, are in a growth phase right now. I think it's more important for us to conserve cash. It's more important for us to build for the longer term. But I can tell you one thing for sure: there's never been a better time to build. And there's never been a better time for behaviors to change in a very significant way, because I think COVID itself has changed behaviors. Means, when was the last time we did a seminar like this online? Yeah, so I think it's a very deep rooted
Last.
So I think there's never been a better time to build, but you have to build rightly. You have to build with the right financial metrics in mind. And in a lot of cases, I would think, and I've had these discussions offline with some of my co-panelists here, is why aren't Indian hotel stocks richly valued on the stock markets? Because if you really look at it, for the last 30, 40 years, if you ever bought a hotel share, it's only given you grief and not really given you pleasure. So as a stock market investor, you're not actually, you're looking at capital, return on capital employed, you're looking at how well the stock rewards you. And the industry is never rewarded because the industry has always been plagued with very high levels of debt, very low average room rate, and occupancy, which gets impacted by any external event. And stock market investors are brutal. They look at, so if putting your money into a banking stock is better than a hotel stock, they'll put your money there. So I think there's a very nice way of what Puneet said, that the real focus is actually going to come on asset management. And companies which manage their assets better and look at a higher rate of return per asset and are able to expand better and get a better geographical mix with the right kind of hotels will survive in the longer term. And the great part about this entire crisis, and there's actually no great part, but the fact of the matter is that everybody, when markets open on Monday in Goa, Bangalore, and Sikkim, everybody starts from line zero. So, and that's the magic of what a crisis can sometimes do. And so finally, how resilient you are, how innovative you are will make all the difference. That's
Anurag, the question I'm going to ask you, because your hotel company understands debt very well. I mean, before you joined it, of course. So what are you guys doing about financial prudence? Since coming in, what are you doing about financial prudence? Because that, I think, is a very sore and touchy subject for you.
No, but I tell you, it's not sore at all or not touchy at all. As a matter of fact, this is something that I spoke about in another forum a few days back, that, when Puneet spoke about asset management and Kapil spoke about return on capital deployed. Now, this is the thought process and the reprogramming, which is a part of resetting. Because other than the eminent panelist, if all our property leadership started thinking on those terms, because typically for a property leader, life ends at a general gross operating margin or a GOP. We need to look below the GOP all the way to debt servicing. So it's a very, very important part of everyone's P&L. Secondly, I think this is, we are, as hoteliers, we are always measure ourselves against each other. That if what is my room to manpower ratio, what is my GOP margin, what is my RGI, where am I competing in terms of the STR, in terms of what's my ranking, what is my year-on-year growth. It's also very important that we bring in some inward. So all our discussions are all inward looking. It's very, very critical that we learn from other businesses. We learn from very profitable real estate companies. We bring in their best practices to make sure that we can be more prudent in the way we reimagine our business. I'll give you an example. Obviously, I represent a company which is both an owner as well as operator of brands, and a huge owner of more than 250 luxury hotels globally, including the Leela portfolio in India. So we have the best of the world in terms of asset management and in terms of what synergies can we bring across with our other businesses, subsidiaries. I'm sure Puneet obviously represents, works for Tata's and Taj, and he would be experiencing the same in his own organization. It's critical that we go back and revisit everything that we took for granted earlier when you spoke about financial prudence. It's no longer important to say, hey, my room to manpower ratio is 1:2 or 1:5. It's the question of what is the manpower that you need today that you can afford. So it's a question of whether you want to start having haircuts or do you want to start downsizing every other month. So, and we no longer will be able to say, I represent a department. All these departmental boundaries will have to get blurred. You spoke earlier about multitasking and multi-skilling. It is no longer just the domain of small boutique hotels. Multi-skilling and multitasking has to happen even in large luxury boxes. Because eventually we all learned that it's not right if you have to really reimagine and right size your manpower or come up with haircuts and all that. So look, we have to be very, very respectful of the capital. We have to always start thinking like an owner and hence respect everything, every element of cost, and look at that cost. And a lot of things also that happened earlier were because many people imagined luxury as an extension of their own personality. We have to get real. We have to start thinking about revenue per square foot, repair and maintenance per square foot. and all those matrices which we are currently not looking. So that's something that COVID has taught us, and I'm sure this is going to stay with us.
Thank you. Every time you say these things about, cost per square foot, I keep thinking of the Leela Palace in Delhi, but that's just me.
Have a chat with me, bro. I'll tell you the new normal.
Okay.
But it's a lovely one.
Done. Mandeep, what? Can you hear me?
Yeah, everyone's made some very, very valid points. But let me try and just give you a little perspective of my own. The decade of 2000 to 2010 was our real growth decade, where we really saw occupancies and rates climbing. That was the time around 2005, 2006, where everybody and their uncles and aunts and their grandmothers and fathers wanted to make hotels. And that's when the inventory started coming in. And then the decade starting from 2010 to now, there has been much slower growth. We've seen too much of supply coming in. We saw the 2008 global financial crisis, then the Indian economy slowing down, etc., etc. And we saw the whole market under stress. So in the decade of 2000 to 2010, the only focus was that, you were filling your hotel, the rates were high, and everybody was just, really enjoying themselves. When the problem started in the decade starting 2010, everybody started tightening their belts, right? And suddenly the focus came, because there's very little you can do on demand. There is only a limited amount you can do on demand. So you started looking at your cost structures. So in that decade from 2010 to 2019, we've done a great job of trying to control our costs in the traditional manner, what we knew, right? So we worked hard on that. And I think a lot of companies were able to bring their costs down so as to improve their margins. This decade and post-COVID is going to be the decade of ancillary revenues, which the hospitality industry wasn't looking at, or at least most people weren't. I remember in the conference that we had in Bangalore, our Hope conference, we had this subject, and of course, Puneet was there, and he has been one of the early leaders who set up the ancillary revenue as a completely independent vertical in his organization. But that's a business, I think, that now everybody is going to start looking. Anuraag just spoke about, cost per square foot and revenue per square foot, etc. These are going to become real norms now. These are now going to start mattering. I think repurposing of a lot of our spaces is going to become real. We're going to start looking at how we can generate more revenue. I think that in this post-COVID era, you'll see hotels looking at probably cordoning off floors and looking whether they can do it, convert them into offices. I think there'll be repurposing of many areas inside the hotel. I think even if you can find 10,000 square feet and convert it into a warehouse, which Amazon can take from you, there will be many such things that will happen inside hotels, and people will keep looking outside the box to find other sources of revenue. So the previous decade, because of the slowdown in rate growth, we saw a lot of effort going into cost management. This decade, starting now, in the post-COVID era, you're going to see a lot of focus on ancillary revenues and other ways, like you're seeing food delivery in hotels, which we completely had missed out earlier. It's a huge, significant business, but we never took it seriously. We had many issues about safety and legal compliances. Everything just vanished once the COVID happened, and we can see a lot of that happening. I see a lot more of that happening going forward to generate more opportunities from revenue than what was traditionally the front office and the food and beverage and some of the minor operating departments. That, I think, focus is going to change.
Okay. Yati?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this has been said. People are rethinking. It's known that the companies that are going to bounce back stronger are the ones that have rethought themselves during this downtime. So whilst, like Mr. Kachru said, that the shop is closed, that doesn't mean the mind is closed. The mind is still active, and people are reprogramming themselves or getting ready to jump stronger, higher, longer, etc. I was recently on a strategy discussion with a hotel company, and the topic was how do we get the hotel into your home? So exactly what Mandeep was saying, not so long ago, we didn't want to do deliveries. But here we were rediscussing how, originally the hotel was a home away from home, but now I'm going to make your home into the hotel. And we have to do that. We will have to find ways of getting active and getting into people's lifestyles closer to them rather than them coming to you for your lifestyle. But an area that I'd like to talk about is a lot of our hotel companies globally, and I see that in India especially, and I know Taj has done a lot of work. We've made a lot of investment in the last few weeks and months on supporting the community. That is a strong emotional investment that has been made, whether it's our own payroll, whether it's the people around us, the medical community, et cetera, et cetera. We need to also create methods of getting returns from that in the future. So I label that as emotional returns. And good hotel companies are also thinking about how they're going to leverage that in the future to get returns back. I can give you certain ideas. I'm sure each one of us in our own businesses is thinking about it. But if you're not, to all our listeners, start thinking about how you're going to get back emotional returns.
Okay. Now let's, we just have 10 minutes left. So I'm going to take a couple of the questions that have been going around, and I'm going to make a consolidated question. So we'll start with Puneet. So this is a question which has two parts. The first part, in your view, what are you thinking about as far as technology and implementing technology in order to improve business and in order to deal with the situation that is going to happen post the lockdown opening? That is one part. And secondly, do you think it is going to continue like this forever? Or do you think, obviously in India, we have short memories. So after 6 months, 8 months, there'll be some level of loosening. So some of these measures will then have to be recalibrated. Puneet.
Very good. So I think it's unfair to say in India we have short memories. I think globally the memories are very short.
Okay.
When I was living in Germany, the 9/11 had happened. And I used to fly to Minneapolis like every 5-6 weeks. The flight used to be empty for almost 9 months. And then 2 years later, you could hardly get on a plane because things had changed. You could go till the terminal gate to drop people, and suddenly you were stopped at the airport entrances, and we brought in all those kind of mechanisms for security, including after 26/11 here in India. So I think humanity has been there for millions of years, and it has always adapted itself and will continue to adapt itself going forward. So that is one part of the business. The second is that we're living in a very fast moving world, and the fast moving world is because of the digitization. So I don't think it's a post-COVID thing. We entered into this focus area for us very strongly already. Like almost a year ago, we hired someone from TCS to come in as our head of digital. And the only good thing is we will be driving this more strongly than ever before. So including in terms of, kind of if you're going to deliver food service at home, I feel our industry has made certain mistakes in the past. And my only thing would be as a recommendation, not only to my colleagues, but to the industry in general. So let's discuss and do these things collectively so that we do not erode the margins on a long-term basis. So that we are just cooking the food, but somebody else is delivering. As an example, we are building the rooms, but somebody else is marketing for us. We are building the websites, but people are going on third-party websites. So I think digital is a great, great opportunity, especially now. And let's try to protect the margins in the industry. So it's an industry that provides attractive returns to all its stakeholders, be it its people, be it its investors. And there is no better and faster way to do this than by leveraging the digital innovation.
Kachru sir.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking about as far as technology and implementing technology? And secondly, what do you think is going to happen 6 to 8 months from now, do you think the same level of hygiene and sanitization that we are going to be talking about as soon as we reopen is going to be a new reality, or is there going to be a recalibration?
I think a lot of things are here to stay. Because of the overall sense of fear and the possibilities people have seen to really take care of themselves and be mindful of what can happen to them, they would not forget it that soon. But in terms of travel, I totally agree with Puneet. As I also said in my opening remarks, you can't stop travel. Travel is a need, it will happen. And on digitization, I'm a firm believer that if you are not quick in adapting to latest technology, whether it is, you're talking about mobile check-ins. And the other day, a friend of mine was telling me, there are Corona ovens now being marketed. You can actually check your crockery, cutlery, and put them in the oven. Somebody,
Yes. I got a call
somebody,
today asking them, please come and interview me. I said, what am I going to do interviewing over an oven?
I was surprised, to be honest. So people are being very innovative, and I think it'll do good to our industry, and it's good for our customer, and it's good for our employees. We spoke about food and beverage. We spoke about delivery. Food and beverage is 42 lakh crores business, and just the delivery business, I understand. I don't know if my numbers are right. It's about 48,000 crores. Is just the delivery business. I think we'll have to seriously look at it. And I tend to agree with Puneet. We have to collectively, as industry, sit down, talk about it as to how we can actually make it a solid revenue stream, do it right, and don't dilute whatever efforts we make. That I would propagate that.
Kapil, do you think it's, I mean, as Puneet was saying, it's brought up an idea in my head, which was in my head. Do you think it's time for all hotels to have a strong enough association which will give a certification which people can believe, saying this is a certification for the food, this is a certification for the standard of hygiene? Is it time for that? Because,
No. So, because any auditor that you will get in will only audit you for a specific period of time, and generally you would audit yourself better because hotels have bigger revenue streams to aim for. So you would generally first of all audit yourself better, and the second part is just do what maybe TripAdvisor did in terms of crowdsourcing comments and whatever. Crowdsource your safety and hygiene ratings. So at Easy Diner, the other part of the business that we operate, we've got a crowdsourcing model where guests will rate and say, I really felt that it was very hygienic and safe. But then there are thousands of ratings coming through, which cannot be influenced just because you're an advertiser or you're something. And those ratings are going in, becoming a consolidated safety and hygiene rating ranked by users. So I think that's a better and a longer term way forward. I also believe that, generally, there's a very big problem in the industry that we have. Everybody, because we all come from the same school, actually thinks kind of the same way. And that is where a thing needs to come in. So, my point is, and a lot of people ask me, should we be doing this or should we be doing that? And my point is, don't do anything if it cannot be 10% of your revenue in the next 5 years, because then you're actually wasting effort. So because right now everybody's doing a thing, everybody wants to do that thing. So my point here is that, if it cannot be even 10% of your revenue in the next 5 years, there's no point doing it. So it's very important to innovate, but don't innovate just for the heck of innovating, just because you want to be sounding cool or you want to be doing everything that everybody's doing. Because you got to look at, finally, this is also a great time. So a lot of people were asking me, just think about it. Both our businesses are actually at zero revenue right now. Postcards closed, Easy Diners closed. And I'm saying, this is the first time I've got an opportunity in 5 years to sit down for 2 months and take a strategic look at my business and what are we building really. Because till now, there was a race every month. There were numbers every month. And when you're running online businesses, you really need to grow every month. Yeah, because that's what investors are looking, public's looking, and a competitor is now, doing something else. And right now, nobody's doing anything. It's absolutely an amazing time. Like I said, there's never been a better time to build. There's never been a better time to introspect that what are you really doing? And like from that perspective, even we are being drawn into 100 directions. Means the idea that you gave me right on auditing, somebody's already said. But like I said, if it can't be 10% of the total revenue that you have in five, and that also is a lower number. Ideally, should be 15 to 20% if it's a strategic initiative. Then just don't do it just because everybody else is doing it. And also leverage the strengths that people have. I think Postcard is what it is in terms with a lot of thank you to my partners in the banks, the credit cards, whether it's American Express, Citibank, IndusInd. Work with partners who also have the shared common purpose and goal that you have. I would just basically look at that, and anything that doesn't do 10% or doesn't add anything more than 10% for Postcard is not a strategic initiative for us, is not an innovation for us. Like Steve Jobs very rightly said, everybody quotes him, but I'll quote him in a very different way, that it's very important to say no to all the wrong things than it is to say yes to the right things. Means he said a different quote, but that's what he really meant. That really, as a leader of an organization, you have to choose the no's more importantly than the yeses. So choose to say no, not because everybody else is doing it, because suddenly you'll see everybody wants to do the same thing. So if everybody wants to do delivery, now everybody wants to do delivery. If everybody tomorrow starts doing laundry, hotels will say laundry is the next big thing that we need to do in India. Okay, so we have to just be a bit careful. I'm not saying these are not laundries. It's absolutely amazing. Most of the hotel laundries are empty in the night. Yeah, and they can be laundering so many things, and it's going to be because of temperatures. It's more hygienic also. It's a great business model. But can 10% of your revenue come from laundries? If it can, then go ahead and do it. So that's what
if I may add, Bikram, very quickly to what Kapil said, I fully agree with the 10% part, but it's also a great opportunity to think of high contribution margin businesses, because our industry is so capital intensive, is such a high cost base, that if we can find the right balance in the revenue initiatives, but high contribution margin, so the margin over long term can go.
We are launching Easy Laundry, Puneet.
No, I don't think so. You might become the president of this association Bikramji is referring to.
I would say you don't need another association. Be careful of that one. You had enough associations of associations.
Yeah. Anuraag, what is give us a bit of your final thoughts. There's a huge hailstorm happening outside in Delhi, apparently. And I've been given multiple things in power chal jayega. So final thoughts, everybody.
No, I think everything has been spoken. Survival and those who thrive beyond this are those who are able to adapt. So whatever we did well a couple of years back up to COVID, all that has to be revisited. I completely agree with what Kapil has said, that we don't want to be doing everything because there's a herd tendency that let's get into. So let's play to our strengths. As a business model, hospitality has been a great business. That's why all of us are here in this room.
Yes.
It's a very rewarding business for all stakeholders. So let's kind of stick to our core, take care of our guests, take care of our associates, take care of our assets and property, but bring in more prudence, bring in more respect for the capital, and ensure that we have a more long-term view than the next quarter. That's all I like to say.
Mandeep?
I think that technology is going to have to play a very, very critical role going forward. I think the industry has been a little slow in adoption of technology, and this disruptive event is going to change that. I think that there will be huge amount of technology adoption and rethinking of hotel design. I do think that we want to build hotels in much lesser capital than we do today. Which we've realized that every time we have a disruptive event, we have a huge problem because we are extremely capital intensive. And some of that, I think, also came from what Kapil said earlier, that, maybe our luxury is a little, over the top. Maybe we need to look at something called frugal luxury, which is still luxury and it doesn't have to be over the top. So I think that our hotel designs will adapt change. I do think that technology will play a larger role in going forward, and I think that it should. I think while some changes will be short term, as everyone said, that memories are short-lived and people will return to the normal, but some changes will remain for a longer term for sure. I do think that hotel design needs to evolve where we use much lesser manpower than what we are used to, at least in this part of the world, which will automatically bring our costs down. I think that our FSI norms, the GFA, that the gross floor area per room that we use today, will change. We will use lesser GFA to build our hotels going forward, because a lot of spaces are no longer going to be required to be of the size that we are currently building them, right? For example, I do think that the front office is over. The front desk is dead and buried, and it'll go away.
Front office managers ko kya hoga?
They will all, come back in different avatars. But
hotel residents ban jayenge.
Safety and hygiene auditors.
Become
journalists.
My take is that the front desk is definitely going, I think, and similarly, there will be these kind of changes. Some of it will be taken over by technology. I do think some of our room designs are going to change rapidly, evolve again with technology. I think some of the contact less, or not maybe a lesser contact stuff, is going to stay for a longer time than what a lot of people anticipate. So my take is technology adoption is going to be far more quicker than we've seen in the past. And there is going to be permanent change in hotel design.
Okay. Yati, last word.
Well, the COVID has a simple cure, soap and water. So companies that communicate that they use soap and water better are going to be winners faster. Of course, I wish all our hotels get stronger and stronger, and all of our colleagues here, making lots more money.
Yes. I want to thank everybody. And at the end of it, there's one very sad question which I saw from a person who's studying in hotel management. And he says, is there a future in hotel management? And I think everyone on this panel will say, yes, there is, for the sake of our own jobs, at least.
Of course there is. I can assure there is.
You can assure him.
Yeah.
He's actually learning. He's actually studying in the IHCL school. So obviously,
Aurangabad.
Okay,
this industry isn't going anywhere for a very long time to come. It's always been resilient. We've been through this in the past. This is probably the worst that we've seen. And like Puneet said, hopefully we don't.
What I would say is
this again, but no guarantees on that.
This is the worst that we have seen till now.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is what I was saying. That I hope don't see it again in my lifetime, but really no guarantees to that.
But for an industry with the best amount of optimists, it's the hospitality and restaurant industry. We are just manned by only optimistic people. Otherwise, you won't survive.
No way to survive. No other way to survive.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all very much. If you don't write a book about this, I am going to definitely write a book at the end of this. Thank you very much for being part of this panel and taking so much time from your busy schedules and, of course, humoring me through this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Bye.